Developing a topic is arguably the most exciting part of beginning a research experience. At this point, you really get to assess what you enjoy most about your course and resolve to learn more. Before you get caught up with source material and conventions of writing, you get to think about the big picture and your place within it. Topics, contrary to popular belief, are not big or broad. They're very narrow in scope to allow for a tight, logical argument. But often that's not how they start. When beginning to develop a topic, start by asking yourself these questions. In the class that I'm writing for, which discussions did I enjoy? What am I curious about? What am I confused about? These 3 simple questions will likely take you to your syllabus, which will help you identify a broad topic. This is a wonderful place to start. Look at your course readings, consult your class notes. What sticks out to you? What kinds of sources do the authors use? Notice what you notice. Now you can really get into the research experience with some general searching on Google or just a good database for your discipline and gather some background information. From there, you can really begin to narrow your topic down based on what interests you. As you read, keep track of the words that are used to describe your topic. Then you can look for them when reading encyclopedia articles and background and general information. Find broader and narrower terms, synonyms, and concepts for key words to widen your search capabilities. This will be helpful later when you begin searching more niche datasets in academic journals. From these words, begin to develop them into questions about the topic. Let's look at an example. We have an idea for our research topic, Frank Lloyd Wright, or maybe modern architecture. These are some kind of broad ideas, but we've done some general searching and we've developed a research question. How has Frank Lloyd Wright influenced modern architecture? Now let's look at a focused research question. What design principles used by Frank Lloyd Wright are common in contemporary homes? The research question here is a good one and super helpful for refining your research on internet sources, books, and other databases. But it's a bit too open-ended to create a tight argument. That's where the focus research question comes in. By looking specifically at design principles, this writer can focus on a subset of architectural history and theory. The integration of contemporary homes into the question gives the writing real-time application, answering the so what question of analysis and relevance for the reader. Lastly, remember to be flexible. It is totally normal for your topic and research question to change throughout the research process. There is no way to be sure of what information is accessible. You may find too much and need to narrow your focus, or too little and need to broaden your focus. Sometimes you don't want to change your topic, but you may decide that some other aspect is interesting or more manageable. That's okay. Keep in mind the parameters of your assignment and be aware of the depth of coverage needed and, most importantly, the due date. These factors will also help you decide how much and when you will need to modify your topic. After successfully developing a research topic, you'll need to do some research and eventually begin writing. Let's talk about some resources and exercises that might help you.
Hi, my name is Felicia Jacques. I'm a junior and I will be discussing the resources and exercises portion of the presentation with everyone today. So for resources, it's completely okay to need help. It's actually expected and highly encouraged that you seek help. So this section we will be going over how you identify where you could get help and how you could ask for the help you need. And we will highlight 4 different resources that you could tap into at Agnes Scott. So the first one here is using the library. The librarians are always eager to help. We have Casey Long, Liz Bagley, and Chris Bishop, who have worked with the CWS numerous times and are always looking forward to working with students on campus. They can help with developing topics, research, and honing in on certain needed materials. Then we have CWS tutors. We are here to help with the process. Just set up an appointment at any point of your writing process, and we will be happy to assist you. Even if you haven't created your thesis yet or discovered your topic, we could still help. Just sign up for synchronized tutoring sessions. to discuss your assignment with a tutor in real time, or use a synchronized schedule to get feedback within 48 hours. We are offering these two different types of tutoring sessions just to help students adapt to the changes that are going on. So either form of tutoring can help you with any stage of the writing process. We still have CWS handouts that people could go for. If you don't have the time to meet in person, you can look into our handouts. The handouts have been created with Agnes Scott expectations in mind, and they should be easy to find on our website page for any subject you're looking for. Lastly, right here, we have professors. At the end of the day, professors are some of the best resources you have. They give you the assignment, they teach the course, and they know what they're expecting. So feel free to email a professor and set up a meeting to go over your thoughts or ask for clarification on anything that seemed confusing. And now exercises. When you are having writer's block, you could utilize these exercises to help generate a draft. The first thing here is to talk it out. You could discuss your ideas with a friend in order to get your ideas out. Sometimes it's just really helpful to have someone to reach out to and talk things through with. Then we have free writing. Free writing is something you could do on your own, where you just write continuously for 10 minutes without judgment. Essentially, just get words on the page. Then you could go through and see what pieces you could use for your assignment. Then we have mind mapping. Mind mapping is when you diagram to visualize and organize your ideas. If you are a visual learner or just need to switch things up, this activity may help you see where your mind is trying to go. All you need is a blank piece of paper, and you start writing ideas down. And then you might circle things and connect things to other ideas that you have on the paper. And finally, research. Researching, collecting quotations, finding primary and secondary sources, all these types of research, when you are having trouble with developing a topic, it could really help push you through. In particular, searching for primary and secondary sources can help foster questions and help narrow down the focus of your paper. Overall, looking at primary and secondary sources are good to review to see if there are any ideas you can expand on. Same goes for collecting quotations. When you have different ideas from other people, that might spark an idea or a question that you may have.
Hello everyone, thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Drisana, and I'll be talking you through the what's and when's of a thesis statement. But before we can know when, we have to know what. So let's talk through what a thesis statement is. A thesis statement is essentially the argument of your paper. It focuses your topic to a specific claim that guides the rest of your essay. Great, now that we have a basic definition, let's talk through some of the essential elements of a thesis statement. Essential element number 1. Your thesis statement should be 1 to 2 sentences. A thesis statement should not be paragraphs long. It is only your argument. You'll spend the rest of your paper trying to prove it. Essential element number 2. Your thesis statement should be arguable. The answer to your thesis should not be a simple yes or no. You or anyone else should be able to support your thesis with further evidence or argue against your thesis. For example, if we were to use the topic of what prevented Esther from recovering in Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, one could say that it was the hospital's failure to support her. However, it could also be argued that her skepticism towards the psychiatric hospitals prevented her recovery. Notice how both of these stem from the same book and topic, yet they are two seemingly different arguments. Essential element number 3. Support your entire paper. Your thesis should encompass all the great ideas and link them to one main idea. You could have 20 different arguments in your paper. These arguments should be communicated through topic sentences that link back to your thesis, but your thesis itself should act as an umbrella, uniting these minor points under its shadow and showing how these ideas relate to one another. So let's try this with the example we used earlier from The Bell Jar, stating that the psychiatric hospital's failure to support Esther is what prevented her from recovering. One topic paragraph that supports the main thesis could be that the hospitals had unqualified staff. Another supporting paragraph could be that the doctor has a lack of regard for his patients, and that prevents Esther from recovering. These are two subpoints that fall under and emphasize the main thesis's argument. Now that we understand what a thesis statement is, we can move on to discussing the when. So when do we use a thesis statement? The short answer is always. We should always use a thesis statement, and we often do without even realizing it. Like we learned earlier, a thesis statement is an argument or central claim. Think back to the last conversation you had with a friend. Did you have a purpose in that conversation? A main idea that you talked about? Even if we don't formally write them out, we use theses in our everyday life. It guides our own thinking and helps others follow our train of thought. So whether it's a history paper, a blog post, a medical research case study, or something in between, we want to include some sort of thesis because it lets our readers know what our purpose is. Since we are now super educated on the what's and when's, let's move on to discuss why use and where to use a thesis statement.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah Trotman. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about topic development and thesis statements. In my section, we'll talk about where a thesis statement is placed and why we should even include one in our papers. Let's first start with where a thesis statement should be placed. Many of us have learned that a thesis statement should be placed at the end of our first paragraph. This is correct, but it could come a bit earlier. In our tutoring sessions, we have seen examples of thesis statements placed even earlier than at the end of our first paragraph. But in general, your thesis statement should be written after you have provided your reader a brief but broad summary of the topic you wish to discuss before moving on to your first body paragraph. It is important to note, however, that this isn't the only place a thesis statement should appear in your paper. As you are writing, you should also mention your thesis statement throughout the rest of your paper, or at least make reference to it while you discuss your supporting evidence in each paragraph. In doing so, you remind your reader of the overall focus of your paper and help them draw clear lines between your thesis and supporting evidence. Lastly, your thesis statement should be restated in your conclusion. After providing supporting evidence throughout your entire paper, it is important to restate your thesis in that conclusion paragraph to remind your audience about your paper's focus and supporting evidence. So now that we've spoken about where a thesis statement should go in our papers, let's chat a little bit about why we should include one. So for as long as I can remember, I've heard of the term thesis statement, right? I vividly remember conversations in middle school, in high school, and even now in college about thesis statements. But one thing that these conversations have always lacked was the why. Why should we include these thesis statements, or why are they important? I always understood its technicality, but for a while, I never understood why I should include one in my paper. Even if you don't believe me right now, hear me out. Thesis statements are actually very important. For one, it tells your reader exactly what the rest of the paper will be about. So it serves as almost kind of like a summary of what you will argue in your paper. Second, a thesis statement also helps your readers recognize the way in which your supporting evidence will appear in your paper. And this can help with clarity and overall understanding of your work. And lastly, contrary to popular belief, thesis statements are also beneficial for you as a writer. When drafting your thesis, you're forced to narrow down your topic, organize your paper, and think about what makes most sense to include in relation to what you want to argue. So before moving on to the next presenter, let's review what we've just chatted about. Where should a thesis statement go? A thesis statement is located in your introduction paragraph. Traditionally, it is either at the end of the first paragraph or somewhere earlier, but still in the intro paragraph. But thesis statements should not just be left there. In each body paragraph, you should also make reference to your thesis statement to help keep your reader focused on your central topic and argument. And second, why should we include thesis statements? Why are they important? These statements are super important to our papers. It tells your reader what the rest of the paper will be about and the order of your evidence. And it also helps you as a writer solidify your argument and overall structure. Now that we've discussed all the important characteristics of a thesis statement, you'll hear from Amaris about how to put them all together and actually write one.
Hi everyone. Thanks again for tuning into our workshop. Now that Leah and Drisana have provided us with the 4 W's of a thesis statement, let's discuss how we actually write them. A good way to think about your thesis statement is a combination between your argument and the so what about your topic. Let's use an example to talk through writing both parts. Our topic is the effects of tax-funded vouchers on school choice and education reform. Our thesis is the implementation of a tax-funded voucher system would significantly harm the public schools and would not achieve the desired outcome of equal access to academic resources among students in all districts. In this example, the topic is school vouchers, but we see that the thesis provides us with further details about the topic that includes both the so what and the main argument. In this example, the argument is the implementation of a tax-funded voucher system would significantly harm the public schools. Because the writer has told us something specific about school vouchers, we can expect that the writer will explain how public schools will be harmed throughout the paper. Remember that your main argument is a statement that can either be supported or argued against with appropriate evidence. Generally, arguments will be your original work, but depending on the assignment, they may also come from an outside source that you have cited. We'll focus now on the so what part of the thesis statement. The so what of a thesis statement places your argument in a broader context to illustrate to the reader why your argument is important. It also provides the audience with more detail about your topic. Let's look again at our example. Our thesis. The implementation of a tax-funded voucher system would significantly harm the public schools and would not achieve the desired outcome of equal access to academic resources among students in all districts. The so what of this thesis places school vouchers in the broader context of education reform and specifically sets the reader up to think about how vouchers might affect equal access to academic resources. Now that we have a better idea of what a so what looks like in a thesis statement, let's discuss how we create this portion of our thesis. In order to arrive at your so what, you should first think about the ideas you wish to convey about your topic. Consider the following questions for our example topic: the effects of tax-funded vouchers on school choice and education reform. Number 1. What would be the effect of school vouchers on students, their communities, and their academic success? Number 2. What is the role of school vouchers in current education reform measures? And number 3. Why should your audience care about the effects of tax-funded vouchers on school choice and education reform? Considering similar questions can help you think deeper about the ideas you wish to convey in your own paper and provide your target audience with reasons that they should care about your argument. Once you have explored these questions in your research, you'll have what you need to create the so what portion of your thesis statement. Now you have the materials to write your thesis statement. It is important to note that your thesis does not have to be finalized and set in stone when writing the initial draft of your paper. Your first thesis will operate as a working thesis statement. A working thesis statement serves as a roadmap to begin the writing process and guide the analysis of your evidence. Begin writing your working thesis statement with, in this paper, I will argue, insert your argument, in order to prove, insert your so what. Because this is a working thesis statement, your so what and argument are non-binding and can be changed if necessary. While your working thesis helps you begin the writing process, it can be helpful to write your final thesis after you have written your paper. When rereading your work, you may find that you have analyzed your evidence beyond the scope of your thesis. You may also find that you have not analyzed your evidence to fully address your thesis. In both instances, you should return to your thesis to ensure that it encompasses the scope of your evidence and the ideas that you have chosen to convey in your paper. We have done so much in this workshop so far. We started by learning how to develop a topic for our papers. We've heard about some helpful campus resources that will help us in writing, and even talked about some exercises that will ease us into beginning our drafts. After that, we talked about the 4 W's of a thesis statement and learned how to write them. Next, Arin will walk us through a short exercise to help us pull everything together.
Hello friends, Now that we've talked a little bit about what thesis statements are, why they're so important, and how to write them, we're going to play a game of this or that to apply some of these techniques. You'll see 2 examples of thesis statements on the screen. Have some time to decide which you feel is stronger, and then I'll come back to talk about the strengths or weaknesses of both. The first one is, Babe Ruth, who played baseball from 1914 until 1935, is a person to admire, versus Babe Ruth, the greatest baseball player of all time, is a person to admire. Now, you'll have about 20 seconds to think about it, but feel free to pause if you want some more time. Out of these 2 sentences, the second one provides us with a stronger, arguable statement. One of the hallmarks of thesis statements is that they provide us with an argument that can be disputed. It would be difficult to argue that Babe Ruth did not play baseball from 1914 to 1935, but someone could try to make a case that Babe Ruth is not the greatest baseball player of all time. As a result, the second thesis statement is a better setup to your paper. Our next choice is between World War II not only affected the economy of the United States, but also altered the role of the American government and the American people forever, versus World War II was a costly war that had a major impact on the economy of the United States. Now take a second to think about these. Now, both of these statements have an argument, or something that could be disputed. However, the first really gives a so what to explain to its reader what the paper will talk about and why you should care. The first statement hints that the paper will discuss the economy, the government, and the American people. The other statement provides a much less detailed so what, and its argument is not quite as specific. Our third choice is between the Andes Mountains, the Amazon River, and the Yucatan Peninsula are the 3 most significant physical features in Latin America, versus 3 physical features found in Latin America are the Andes Mountains, the Amazon River, and the Yucatan Peninsula, which are all vital to the region. Take a second to think about it. Okay, both of these statements talk about 3 particular areas in Latin America, which tells your reader that you'll talk about these specific places in your paper. And both these sentences make an argument. Someone could possibly argue that the Andes Mountain, the Amazon River, and the Yucatan Peninsula are not the most significant physical features in the region, or that they are not vital. However, the first one makes a stronger stance, as most significance tells us that other physical features matter less, while the second example allows space for other vital features. This leads me to conclude that the first statement is stronger, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what works best with your paper and the evidence you have. Our final option is between, to address the weaponization and destruction of the environment during wartime, the international community must reevaluate the premises that our environmental protection laws rest on and reshape them in ways that recognize the active status of the environment in human conflict, versus generals should consider the impacts on the environment before they make military decisions. In these sets of thesis statements, you can really see the difference in so what that Amaris talked about in the last section. The first statement clearly outlines exactly what the author will be talking about, addressing the weaponization and destruction of the environment during wartime. The second statement doesn't really give the reader this context, and as a result, fails to really make its case for its argument. That's the last of our examples. I hope that this exercise helped you feel more comfortable identifying strong and weak thesis statements.